Hello, and welcome to a video roundup of what was discussed and delved into at the Group Leaders meeting on Saturday, the 6th of April 2024. Unfortunately, due to technical reasons, for this section you will have to suspend disbelief. Whilst you will see a picture of Adrienne, your imagination will need to go into overdrive and hear an American accent where in fact it will think it is hearing a South London accent. I will try to précis her presentation. As Adrienne is new to the group co-ord role, she gave a brief outline of her group history within Peterborough U3A. She had tried rowing, which she found good for teaching a beginner to the pastime, but she gave up to concentrate on her golf. Then she joined the rock and roll group as a keyboard player, but only for a short time, as the playlist contained a few too many country tunes for her tastes. She is now part of the French group, which is her favourite of the four groups that she currently participates in. She is finding that Peterborough U3A is giving her the opportunity to revisit many of her past interests from before her working life. Adrienne then went on to outline why and how she ended up as our new group coordinator. She became semi-retired in 2007 and joined Peterborough U3A. Then, in 2021, she bit the bullet and stopped work altogether, giving her more time to participate in the U3A. From reading the Pulse newsletter, she discovered that the committee were looking for a secretary and she volunteered. However, it turned out that the committee were also looking for someone new to take up the group coordinator role. So she decided that that may suit her project skills from her workdays. She shadowed the outgoing group co-ord for a year before stepping into the role on a permanent basis. Her prior work-based knowledge included working on IT projects and is enjoying reacquainting herself with computers and software. The people perspective of the coordinator role is probably more to the fore than the systems aspect. It involves participation in committee projects, helping new group leaders set up their new groups, and to assist, where needed, existing group leaders with keeping their groups on the right lines. It's always satisfying for her when she hears from a member who has a new idea for a group and she then steps up to find ways to help them make it happen. The principles of the U3A gel well with the way that Adrienne has always approached life, involving lifelong learning, self-help and mutual aid. Adrienne then thanked the committee for their support and group leaders for their kindness to her in her new role, and passed the microphone over to your chairman, Ian Gray.
Thank you, Adrienne. Whereas other speakers might well be focusing on the specifics of their topics, I'd like to concentrate on very much the general picture, really answering three questions. Why are we here? Who are we? And how we're doing. Well, firstly, I would say the reason we're here really is because you group leaders are the platform that attracts our members and encourages them to stay. Without your activities in the groups that you run, there'd be no reason for people to join us. Now, we're all one organisation, so to some extent we are preaching to the converted, and you group leaders, as I say, are at the centre of all of that. You provide the activities that our members participate in, and hopefully you feel that the committee themselves provide support to you. We now have a new group of people who help to run this organisation, and they are the RUGs, the really useful group members. So formed because they do support the committee and the wider organisation in lots of ways that mean the committee do not have to take on every single role that exists. I'll come back and talk about the RUGs a little bit more in a minute, but first of all I want to, because it's your meeting, deal with some of the questions and topics that you yourselves posed when we invited you to this meeting. Firstly, there were a couple of questions about Google Forms. Initially, let's talk about completing them. Increasingly, your committee find the use of Google Forms to be very important to enable us to manage data. And in the example of inviting you to this meeting, it allows us to manage the data without having to count on fingers and toes who's coming and what their dietary requirements are. And so that's why you have to put in your name and membership number or other similar identifiers to allow Google Forms to automatically calculate the answers to the questions we asked. We've also had questions about Google Forms about whether it's possible to use them to enhance the management of your own groups. And I think the answer is that it's probably suitable for the big groups like theatre and day trips and travel, but probably not so useful for the week in, week out groups. That said, if anybody wants to learn how to use them more to help manage their groups, then I'm sure we can arrange some training. So please do get in touch. The next point that a number of questions were raised about was our website, about why it doesn't do this or why it's in that colour or why shouldn't it be able to display X or Y. Now the truth of that matter is that several years ago the committee of U3A opted to form a consortium with about 25 other U3As across the country to develop a website from an independent supplier. This is not the standard Third Age Trust national website. In fairness, we and several other U3As needed a website that would do a lot more than just display what we're about. It needed to manage money, it needed to manage a membership database, etc. And I'm pleased to be able to say that our website currently costs us a lot less than what the Third Age Trust website offering does. And the price we pay for that is really the fact that being in a consortium, we have to consort and consult with the other U3As before making any changes. But believe me, we know it has shortfalls, but overall we think it actually provides a more flexible, cost-effective option than going with the Third Age Trust. One or two people asked about the business cards that we've actually recently produced, and please do use them, because this is an easy fit in the pocket or handbag way of publicising our organisation to people who may be thinking about joining. So do take a bundle out with you whenever you go and hand them out to anybody who'll listen. There's been a question about why don't we have a paper copy printed groups directory. Well, of course, cost is a factor, and we have successfully reduced our membership fees over several years, and one of the key contributing factors to that is that we moved away from paper and printed with the associated postage costs versions of various group directories, newsletters, etc. And the other difficulty with anything printed is almost as soon as it's printed, it's out of date. So although we never say never, our current thinking is that we will stick with the digital version of the group's directory. There was a question from the cycling groups about safety, and although we now know that most of this was focused on a lack of understanding that they perceive amongst the general public about the revisions to the highway code, it is worth bringing this up, and we've asked them to tell this story in Pulse in a future issue. Risk assessment forms for walking groups. Well, we have over the last year or two revised our risk assessment forms, as these forms are required by the Third Age Trust for insurance purposes, and they are now generic. We have about 7 or 8, I think, that will fit different circumstances for different groups, but you do not have to fill one in at every single event that your group attends. They are designed to be generic and last for several months. The only thing I would say is that it does need a quick check, maybe once a year, and the most significant change from when they were first introduced is that we've taken out references to COVID lockdown, and so you might just want to check that. So on to the question of who are we? Well, I'm pleased to say that we are the second biggest U3A in the country, and we're proud to be at that place. That large scale means that we've been able to reduce our membership fee over the last few years to a very economic £10, which is significantly lower than many U3As. And this is really due to a combination of economies of scale, and also the fact that we've taken the view that we will introduce a lot of digital processes, membership renewal, name but one, and of course the newsletter Pulse as well, all of which has helped us to manage economically and effectively. I would just like to draw our attention to unusual groups. Apparently, feedback from the Third Age Trust suggests that we have a number of unusual groups. Of course, because we are focused on Peterborough U3A, they're not unusual to us, but the view from outside is that we do have some very unusual groups. That's groups like All Matters Irish, belly dancing, classic cars, and they're quite keen for us to publicise these through the Third Age Trust magazines as and when we can. And the reason why we know this is because when one of the Eastern Region U3A representatives from the Third Age Trust visited us at last year's Activities Day, they were very keen to tell us that they were blown away by the wide range of groups, the enthusiasm, the number of people attending our Activities Day. And I think that is a pat on the back for all of you group leaders, because you are the jigsaw puzzle pieces that form Activities Day. There is really a downside, I guess, to who we are, and that does mean that benchmarking is difficult. Difficult because there aren't too many U3As of our sort of size with the developed processes we have, and so when we do, for example, join on Zoom calls with other U3As, it's quite difficult for us to compare and indeed learn from them, because we tend to be a little bit more developed than most of them. And the other challenge that we have really is that managing our committee roles. We have the same size committee as many other U3As, but we might have 8 or 10 times the membership, which means we've got 8 or 10 times the number of membership renewals, The same scale applies to payments, etc., events, and therefore the workload comparatively is significantly more, and that's why we need to plan to have deputy or assistant roles to some of our committee functions. I promised you that I'd return to talk about the really useful group. We formed this group last year, and I just wanted to talk about some of the things that they are already doing in their support the organisation and support the committee functions. We have two teams actually involved with new member welcomes. One of which carries out the task of, within a couple of weeks of any new member joining us, they get a welcome phone call to make sure that they understand their way around U3A and how to join a group. And the other runs parallel with that, with guests being able to come to tea and talk. We have a small team of people who ensure that anybody who attends for the first time enjoys a meet and greet welcome and is introduced to the organisation. I have to say that if I was joining an organisation, particularly if joining online, to get a personal touch so early on is exactly what we want. There's also a roving reporter and roving photographer role, where a couple of individuals will join groups and listen and take photographs to what's going on and write up a report to publicise that group in Pulse. So if you maybe haven't or don't feel you've got the skills to write up such a report, then do contact Adrienne and ask could you have the roving reporter or the roving photographer turn up at your event. We've got a number of other really useful group members who help with event support, be that car parking, setting up the PA system, running and organising the first aid courses we did recently, delivering refreshments at events as well. Now, all of these tasks were previously done by your committee. And so I want to take this opportunity to extend a thank you to the really useful group members, and please do publicise this to your members in the hope that we can encourage even more to join in. So how are we actually doing? Well, let's have a look at membership, and you can see that is growing nicely over the last 4 years, not dramatically. And most of our members come from word of mouth. There's a little bit of a presence we have in some local free magazines, but generally it's word of mouth. And that's seeing a steady growth of about 1.5% a year. And Pulse, just a moment to talk about that. We email out typically just over 2,000 a month. And we know that some 1,700 plus reads per month. Now, it might be more than that because maybe Mr. and Mrs. read on the same login, or it might be slightly less than that because it's the same person coming back several times. But nevertheless, that's quite an encouraging readership since we launched the monthly edition of Pulse. Tea and Talk. When I first went to a tea and talk, there were 15 people turned up at Peterborough Library. Now at the Fleet, we have 80 or 90 attendees regularly coming along. One of the other changes we made is to introduce the role of events manager, which Hilary has taken up after she stepped down from being group coordinator. And this will result in more events being run and better organisation. There is a but though, because never is anything actually perfect, and some of the things that we'd like to address are here. Full groups and waiting lists. If our groups are full, that gives nowhere for our members who are interested in that subject to be able to join. One of the ways that we can manage this is if the group pages are kept up to date we know when there are full groups, and we can start to work with the group leader and the members, maybe to set up a spin-off group. So I'd encourage you to ask for help if your group is full for whatever reason, and to look at how we can manage the waiting lists more effectively. It has been reported to me a couple of times that we've had people turn up at groups unexpectedly, and maybe with it being a big group, the group leader has not necessarily noticed that there's an uninvited guest, if you like. Whilst we do encourage members to try a taster session at a group, this is on the understanding that they will have spoken to the group leader and cleared that in advance. If someone turns up at a group uninvited, unexpected, then that really may mean that they are jumping the waiting list process. And so please do take care to spot whether people who are not actually part of your group are turning up, because we do need to make sure they understand the process of requesting to join a group. I'd also like to say how important it is that group leaders are involved in communicating onwards to their groups. Yes, we have Pulse once a month, but I'd really like to think that our group leaders once or twice a month in the interval between pulses are passing on some of the headlines to their group leaders, whether it's about events or news within Pulse. And finally, I'd like to make sure that one of the messages you take away is that we constantly need more support roles in PU3A. Now, whether that's to actually join a committee or a less formal role in the RUG capacity, or a deputy or assistant role to help the committee, then please do spread the word that we do need extra manpower. Whilst I quite understand that the focus of group leaders is always going to be on their next event, be that a week or two away, your colleagues on the committee do have to think further in advance, because if there's no committee next year, there'll be no U3A and no groups and no activities. So thank you very much for listening. I'd now like to pass on to Terry.
Hello, I'm Terry Young. I've got the privilege of being your U3A treasurer. As I'm new to the role, I'll start with a few things about me and how I got here. So, I started my working life in food ingredients. I started making cheese in deepest Shropshire after I graduated. And at those days we had milk and butter mountains, and I soon found myself working for the Milk Marketing Board selling those, and that took me to all sorts of places like Syria and Saudi Arabia. I then moved on to selling malted barley and to whiskey distilleries in Scotland, which is one of the most difficult jobs I've ever had, having to drink so much whiskey while offering our products out. But then also selling to breweries from Barbados to Nepal. So like most of the people looking at this presentation, I've had an interesting life. I retired in Christmas 2019 after being in Nottingham for about 8 years, working with a couple of guys setting up a vitamin manufacturing business. And there I was dealing with companies like Holland & Barrett. As the sales director, I was dealing with our accountants and looking after money in and money out and such like. So that gave me a background for handling the treasurer's work here. So we arrived in Peterborough in Easter 21. We moved here to be close to our son's family. They were already living in Aylesworth. Ursula, my wife, and I joined U3A to learn Spanish in June 21. That's our first taste of U3A, so we've never been involved in the organisation anywhere else. Alan put up the advert saying that the organisation needed a treasurer because Mary was stepping down, and I thought that might be an interesting thing to do. Volunteered and was co-opted as deputy treasurer at the AGM in 22. They seemed to think I did a reasonably good job, and in the AGM last year I was actually made treasurer. So I enjoy doing the job. It's not just a hobby and an interest, it's a real business to be involved with. So I thought we'd have a look at our finances. We are actually a £100,000 turnover business. We run 3 bank accounts and 2 accounts for our reserves. The main charity account is the money that takes in everybody's subscriptions and pays that out for the committee's running expenses, the Third Age Trust subscriptions that get paid to be a member of U3A, the Third Age Matters magazine, the fees for auditing our accounts each year, the hall costs for our committee meetings, and for things like our monthly tea and talk and so on. All of those are within our main charity account. The main charity, as you know, our subscription doesn't cover the cost of any of the activities of the groups that you might be involved with, and the main charity doesn't include any of those turnovers either. We have 2 accounts for dealing with that. One is for the day trips and theatre groups, because between them they turn over £30,000, with a substantial chunk of that money going to a local company, Fowlers, for providing all the coaches. And then separate from that, we have all of the groups, and their turnover, it might surprise you, is in the order of £40,000. A lot of the money that is spent there is hiring the community halls, the church halls and such like that are needed. So it's interesting to think that by our activities, we are actually supporting local community halls. Each of the halls will have a volunteer like us who's desperately trying to bring in money to pay for the heating bills, new roofs, painting the place and such like. And we're making a contribution to that. So let's move on and have a look at the treasurer's role. What does the treasurer actually have to do? The treasurer has to account for all the money that comes in and allocate it to the groups that it's been deposited with. All of you group leaders know, if you're handling money, that you have ways of identifying the money that comes to me. You might have a dedicated paying in book with a numbered paying in slip, or you may use backs and identify it with a reference, or you may simply send me an email and say I've deposited this amount of money. So there are various ways it comes in, and we have to allocate it to your balances. We receive all the invoices for the coaches, for the theatres, for the venues, for the hires of the village halls and such like. We don't just pay them, we send them out to the group leaders to check that they're correct. After all, it's your money and you're responsible for keeping all your accounts in order. And that's one of the things I help do, is I make sure that all groups are in balance. Nobody is actually spending more than they've got available at any given time. Over and above that, I have to prepare budgets and finance reports for the committee so that it's a transparent operation and the committee shares responsibility for knowing how much money is coming in, where it's all going, and that we are fulfilling our proper financial responsibilities. I'm there to provide finance-related advice and support to any of the group leaders or to the committee. And there are various statutory requirements that have to make sure are considered. For instance, we have to make sure we have enough money in the charity account to keep our charity going for 6 months at any given time. So that's the treasurer's role. What does the treasurer actually have to do? what am I doing when I'm going about my business? Well, I use email, I use the phone, I use Excel spreadsheets, and I use QuickBooks. It sort of goes without saying that you have to be reasonably at home with laptops, computers, and be at home with that sort of thing. Now, QuickBooks is it's a database. It's a very good and very straightforward accounting system that Mary McCarthy brought in for running the business, and goodness knows how anybody managed to run this business of 2,300 members and £100,000 turnover when it was just on paper. It's not difficult to use, but it's not particularly intuitive, so it takes a bit of getting used to. Many of the jobs on the committee involve getting out and about and seeing people. Mine doesn't really. I get to work from home. What am I doing? Well, and how much work is there involved? Well, let's have a look at December to February, a 3-month period. Ian did ask me to have a look and see if I could break down what transactions are there, what is the workload. So this is a quiet period. It's not an end of year where we're having to prepare accounts and there's lots of money coming in for subscriptions. It's not a period when we're getting a rush of people catching up with their billing to us. It's a reasonably quiet period, but nevertheless, over that period, we took in 112 deposits, 96 of which were groups. We made out 69 payments, 45 of which were groups. And on top of that, there were various emails and phone calls to resolve various queries, to provide information and support to people, and to provide reports to the committee. And what does that involve? Well, that's 2 to 3 half days a week. That's a bit more than I'm comfortable with. I'm happy with 2 half days a week, but the extra one really means that we're looking for support on the work. The committee's looking for some support on the work, and let's have a look at what those roles might be. Firstly, we're looking for a deputy treasurer. That's important because if the treasurer isn't available, our money still needs to be managed. The stand-in who would have to manage that needs to have a knowledge of QuickBooks to be able to get payments made and to take the money in, and needs to know our financial processes so it can run smoothly. And of course, somewhere along the line, the treasurer would be wanting to stand down after a few years of doing the job, and at that point, it's important to be able to have a smooth handover to the deputy so that the business just hardly notices that anything's changed. So the stand-in does need knowledge of QuickBooks and our financial processes, and it really is important that we find someone that's willing to take this on. This is not just the treasurer saying this, the committee is saying this for the purpose of keeping our business running smoothly. In the meantime, because it might be difficult to find a deputy, we still need to find an assistant, please, to take on just a bit of the work, but without carrying any of the responsibility. So let's have a look at what the assistant treasurer's work might be. The assistant treasurer would receive the invoices and record them in a spreadsheet. So you'd have to be able to deal with emails, be able to pick up PDF copies that are attached to the emails and file them, and to record those entries in a spreadsheet. You need to be able to email the invoices that receive to the group leaders for check-in and authorization to pay. And when the group leaders have approved, that gets recorded and the invoice gets entered into QuickBooks. The bank deposits would have to be allocated to the correct group in QuickBooks, and that's about it. So what's the workload involved? Well, a couple of hours, maybe a couple of days a week, fitted in, broadly speaking, whenever it suits you, as long as we hit a couple of deadlines during the week. But I'll go into that if we have somebody to go run through it with. You need to be capable with basic spreadsheets and have a computer access that provides this for you. you need to be willing to learn QuickBooks. It's not that difficult. It's just like a filing system, really. Where am I going to put this so I can find it again? Have I allocated it correctly? And have we missed anything? Importantly, there's no responsibility for the bank account. The assistant treasurer doesn't need to think, oh, I might pay somebody too much, or I might miss a payment or something. No responsibility for the bank account. You'd be responsible for setting up a payment schedule in any given week for the treasurer, but not actually responsible for getting into the bank account. And maybe also importantly, there's no committee work involved. And probably top thing is, there's no obligation to become the future treasurer. We're just looking for somebody who can help spread the workload and contribute. Somebody who wants to just chip in a bit and help us a bit. And if you know anybody who might be interested in either of these roles, really I'm reaching out to you. I'm new. I only know a few people that I've met at Worldwide Dining or bumped into in Spanish. But as group leaders, do you know anyone who might be interested? You know my email address. Please ask them to get in touch and we can just have a chat. No commitment if you pick up the phone. If it's not the right thing for you, then no obligation. Just thank you for showing an interest. So finally, a big thank you. Firstly, a big thank you to Mary McCarthy for running such a beautiful system that is so just what we need to do, which provides all the reports we need and is quite easy to work with if you've got the right mindset. She deserves so much credit and congratulations for doing that. And a big thank you to the committee members who've welcomed me in and to all the group leaders I've been working with. Of course, there are a lot of group leaders who money doesn't touch the treasury because you collect money on the day for something that you do on the day, or some of you are doing things that don't involve money at all. So thank you very much anyway for bearing with me with all my ums and ahs on this, and I hope it's been interesting, and if anybody wants to ask any more things about it, please get in touch. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks for that, Terry. We're now moving on to items about the website and how the group leaders can get the best from their group page facilities. My name is Alan Locke and I look after the website and other IT functions that we use in Peterborough U3A. We are lucky in Peterborough U3A as we have a broad mix of IT skills within the committee and also some of the wider U3A members. However, this is not to say that everyone is as comfortable with tech as others. So what I'm going to do is walk gently through 4 of the facilities that we provide for group leaders. The facilities are there to try and make the leader's life easier in running their groups. However, this is just an overview, but it may prompt you to try things, and then, if you're stuck, you can contact me and ask any relevant questions. Okay, today we're going to be looking at 4 headline topics. Firstly, we're going to be looking at group lists, which hasn't changed much, but it always bears a bit of promotion as they are quite important to the running of the U3A and your groups. Then we're going to move on to web buddies, which is something new to help group leaders who are not quite so IT literate and also may be useful for groups that devolve leading meetings on a meet-by-meet basis. Then we're going to take a look at our email system and why it's advisable to use that rather than personal emails and lists held on your computer. And then finally, we're going to look at how to make your group pages more appealing. You need to remember that your page is your window to the world. And when people look into your window, they don't want to see a bare room or a really untidy space. So, our first topic will be your group membership lists. In each of the 4 facilities that we're going to look at today, I will cover the whys, the hows and the advantages for the group leader and also others in Peterborough U3A. So we'll look at the whys for your group membership lists first. The biggest whys for group lists is actually for the group leader themselves. An up-to-date list will tell the leader, firstly, if a member of the group is still a member of Peterborough U3A, and if they're not, they won't show. It also allows the leader to assign a web buddy, which we will be looking at shortly. It allows the leader to use the system email function with confidence that they will reach all of their members in the group. It helps to keep records on the right side of GDPR as well. But your lists also allows the committee, or more specifically the group coordinator, to see what is happening with all the groups. And finally, by including members in individual group lists, it allows the member themselves to use their My Groups and My Program function. I mentioned that the group coordinator can run a report on what is happening with group membership lists. And this screen shows that report and just what the group coordinator can see with regard to the group membership. In the first column, there is the name of each group. Then in the third column, it shows the maximum number of members that the leader has said that the group can cope with. In the next column, you have the maximum number that can go on a waiting list, which is a figure that the group leader has decided on. The fifth column shows the current number of accepted members in the group. Then the next column shows the actual number of members currently on a group waiting list. This is where the group has reached its maximum number, but people have joined the waiting list to wait for a space to become free. Then we have the number of members who have applied but not yet been accepted into the group by the group leader, even though there are free spaces available. And in the final column, it shows the status of the group regarding the member numbers. So you can see that our database gives a fairly comprehensive roundup of the member status of each and every group. Okay, so just to save any confusion, for this demonstration we are using the Peterborough U3A test system. So the groups and members are not real. The colours and content of the pages shown may differ slightly from the live system, but the functionality is exactly the same. For the first demonstration, we're looking at the ballroom dancing group in the test system. To get to your membership lists, once you have navigated to your group page, the leader should click on the head and shoulders icon as I've shown here with a red arrow. It should be noted that in this case the icon has a red background, and the red background signifies that there are members who have applied to your group but have not yet been accepted in. If all member applications have been administered, then the icon will be on a plain white background. So now we've clicked on that head and shoulders icon, and here you can see the group list for the ballroom dancers. As signified by the red background for the head and shoulders icon, there are 2 members at the top who have applied but not yet been accepted into the group. Any members that have applied but not been accepted in will always be on the top of the member list, and their status will show as applied. Next to that is a link titled Confirm, which allows the group leader to accept them into the group. Should you wish to reject them for any reason, you should click the white cross in the red circle. And when you do this, you will be asked to enter a reason for the rejection, and that reason will be emailed to the member that applied. Below those applied members are the members who are already in the group, and these are tagged as a group member. For each of those, you can email them if you click on the email link towards the right-hand side on the same row. If the member has registered a special need, there will be a disability icon in the row for them. and by hovering over that, a pop-up will then tell the leader what that particular need is that they've registered. Finally, towards the bottom of the screen, any members who have been suspended from Peterborough U3A are shown at the bottom, and these are in red with a status of suspended. Now this will normally be during the month of September, between the end of the renewal period, which finishes on 31st of August, and the end of the grace period, which again finishes on the 30th of September. If you should see any of these at the bottom of your list, if they turn up at a meeting, they should be advised to contact the membership secretary to find out why they've been suspended. Normally, this would be for non-payment of fees, and as such, they can only attend one group session after the end of the membership year, and after that, if they haven't paid up, then they should be advised that they can't attend the group any longer as they are no longer insured. At the group leader meeting, a question is raised on why some members are shown with blue text in the status column. If the member was added by the group leader manually, then the group member shows in blue text. Otherwise, if they've applied via the website, the text will be in the normal black colour. Okay, so we've now moved back to your group page with the icons across the top, and if your group list is up to date, you can also use the attendance sheet icon, which I've highlighted here with a red arrow, and it's the black pen in a square box. When you click that icon, you'll be presented with a pop-up, and on that pop-up, what you should do is firstly complete the start and end dates that you want the sheet to display, and then once you've completed those two fields, click on either PDF format, which will give you a sheet that you can print off on your printer in paper form to take along to your meeting, or alternatively you can click on the Excel format button, which will download and send to you via email an Excel spreadsheet so that you can take a device along to your meeting and you can record the relevant detail electronically. Here we can see an example of what the registration sheet will look like for your group, whether that be in paper format or as an Excel spreadsheet. Each group member is automatically added to the list if your group list is up to date. And there are also rows to record any monies taken and the relevant banking details for that money. Another function within the U3A web system that relies on your group membership list being up to date is the system emails. But we'll be looking at that in a few minutes time, but this is the icon that you will click for your system emails. As I say, the email system is reliant upon your group membership list being up to date for it to function correctly. Okay, so that's the end of the section of this presentation about using the group membership lists. However, those membership lists do impact upon the use of the new facility we're going to describe now, whereby a group leader can assign a group member to help out with the online administration of their group. These group members are referred to as either web buddies or group administrators. In Peterborough U3A, we tend to use the term web buddy, but other U3As do refer to them as group administrators. Okay, well, as previously in the section about your group membership lists, let's look at the whys of what Web Buddies is all about. Previously, if a group leader needed an IT assistant to look after the web page and any other IT use regarding the group, that person had to be tagged as a second group leader. Now this was quite restrictive. Only one second leader could be assigned, and they also appeared as a contact on the group page, which meant that they could end up getting calls about the generality of the group and not just the IT side. Now, with this Web Buddy system, a group leader can select any member of their group to assist with the web system admin, without them actually showing as a contact point. This can be changed at any time by the group leader, and you can have more than one person as a Web Buddy. However, we really don't suggest that a leader makes more than 2 Web Buddies at any point in time. The reason for this is that if the ability to access members' details is spread too widely, then the chances of GDPR breaches increases wildly. And then tracking down where and by whom the breach has been made becomes extremely difficult should there be a complaint. The buddy has the same full IT capability that the group leader has, so can deal with emails, group lists, group page design, and all of the other facilities available to the group leader. Before you make a member of your group a buddy, you really should advise that buddy about GDPR, that's General Data Protection Regulations, and the fact that they shouldn't be sharing any personal information that they're able to see. So that's the whys of Web Buddies. Now we'll move on to the hows, how you can create and or remove a Web Buddy at any point that you decide. So what we're looking at now, we're back in the group member lists, and it should be mentioned at this point that only members of your group can be assigned as a Web Buddy. If they're not part of the group, they just simply can't be a Web Buddy for your group. And if the member should leave your group, then their Web Buddy access stops as soon as they're removed from the group. In this demo, what we're going to do is we're going to make Rowan Atkinson the Web Buddy for the Ballroom Dancing group. Now please tell me who would want Mr. Bean as their Web Buddy, but there you go. So what you should do is find the member in your list and click on the red X on that row as indicated here. When you click on that red X, a new pop-up window will appear. And there are 2 functions in that window, and you need to make very sure that you select the correct one of those 2 functions. The one that you don't want is Confirm Delete. That option will actually remove the member from your group completely, so don't click on that button by mistake. Below that button is another button saying Make Administrator. And to make the group member into a Web Buddy or group administrator, you should click on that button just once. When you click on that button, what will happen is you will be immediately returned back to your group list. And what you will find is the person that you've selected, in this case Rowan Atkinson, will now have a large red A on the far right hand side on the row that corresponds with his name. So let's assume that you're at the point where you no longer wish that member to be a Web Buddy for you. To revert the member or members to normal membership of the group and not a Web Buddy anymore, click on the red X again, and this time in the pop-up window, click on the Remove Administrator button. When you do that, you'll be returned to the member list again, and the red A will have disappeared from the row for that particular member. It's a simple system to use, but it may help the group leaders who are less IT aware and possibly in circumstances where someone in the group needs temporary IT facilities. Okay, so that was a nice short section to do with Web Buddies. What we'll do now is we will move on to the 3rd facility that I've been asked to run through, and that is using U3A Web to email your group members. Okay, so from figures that we can access, we believe that the majority of leaders are already using this facility, but it does stand up to a little more scrutiny for everyone. The big advantage of our secure email system is that it always abides by GDPR rules. This means that you can't be hauled over the coals for sharing sensitive personal information about your group members. As long as your group list is up to date, you will always email the right people. Another advantage is that there is more than one way to email your group members depending on what you require. You can, if you wish, email all group members very simply at the click of a couple of buttons. You can add attachments to those emails up to a system size limit. And you can format the text in the same way as you would by using a Word document. We're also going to look at the timeout issue as we get through this demonstration. Alternatively, you can send single emails to members or just a small selection of them. From the system, a history of emails that have been sent via your group pages is always available in case of queries looking backwards. If somebody says, I never received such and such an email, you can get to the history of your emails sent from the group and see that whether or not they were included on the email. And there is no need for you to keep a separate list which might easily become out of date on your PC by using your personal email. So you just don't have to do that. And this is true as long as the members do update any changes to their email address in our system. So to access the email system in U3A Web, the leader simply clicks on the @ symbol in the icon list as I've shown here. Once you click on the @ symbol, a list of all of the members in your group is shown. But we do need to look at the various divisions of members again. Firstly, there are those that have applied to join the group but have not yet been accepted in. These show with a status of applied. Then there are any members who have no email address logged with the U3A database system. These show with a contact method of just telephone. Then there are the majority of your members who will show with a status of group member and contact type as tele and email. And finally, if there are any suspended members in the group, they show at the bottom but without anything showing in the status column. So the first step is that you need to select which group of members you wish to email, depending on the nature of the email. Or if you are selecting just one or maybe two members, how to do that. There are three options on how to select the recipients that you wish to send emails to. The first is to click the link Contact Only Group Members. This will place a check mark against any member that is currently a group member, but not those showing as applied, that is, waiting admission, or those who are suspended. Obviously, it will not select those who have no email registered in our database. If required, you could deselect any of those checked individually should you wish to do so. Now we will move on to how you select everybody apart from those who are without email, of course. Firstly, I will draw your attention to the link marked Clear List. By clicking this link, all of the check marks are then removed from any previous selection. Your second option on selecting who you wish to email is to click the link Contact Everybody, which I've highlighted here in red. This option selects all of the people in your list, including those who are still awaiting acceptance and also any who are suspended. The only members not selected are those without a registered email address, because obviously you can't send someone an email if they haven't got an email address. Once you are sure that you have the correct members selected with a check mark, in this case it is just group members, you need to scroll down the page and click the Define Email Content button, which I've shown here in a red box. You are then passed to the text editor, where you can firstly give the email a meaningful title. It's always good practice to give recipients an idea about what the email is concerning. You can also attach up to 4 documents such as Word or Excel files, or maybe a picture or a PDF file. However, something to be aware of is that there is a combined maximum file size of 10 megabytes for the 4 attachments. Now, in the case of pictures or JPEGs, you should ensure that their size is able to fall within these confines, as modern photos can be very large. There are online websites that will reduce a picture file size if suitable. If you read the note on the page to remind yourself of this limit, it's probably a good idea. In the lower section, there is a text editor where you type up the content of your email. This works in a similar way to other text editors like Word. Once completed, the user simply clicks on the Send Emails button. And you're then presented with how the email will show to the recipients. And then once you see that and you're happy with it, you can click on Send Again. Now, I mentioned earlier at the beginning of this section about there being a timeout. Problem is perhaps too strong a word, but there is a timeout issue. The text editor that we're using here is a thing called TinyMCE, which is a third-party app. It isn't actually provided by U3A Web. U3A Web uses an external app. And to this end, they have got certain confines that they put on the app itself. And one of these is that after a set period of time, the text editor will actually time out. So if you take too long to type up your email, basically what happens is the text editor times out, it removes all of the text that you've typed in, and you go back to square one. And this timeout happens after roughly 20 minutes. And there are a couple of ways to get around this. If you are typing up a long email, what you can do is every now and again, if you click on the button which I've highlighted here, which says Save Email Body, that will save the actual text that you've typed in. If it does time out, you then go back and the text will still be there. You will have to retype up the email subject and reattach any attachments, but at least you saved all of the typing that you've done for perhaps 19 minutes. The front doorbell rang, you went and answered the front door, and when you came back it was all gone. So if you just tap on Save Email Body after perhaps 15 minutes or so, at least you'll save yourself that aggravation. There is a second way to get around this if you are composing a long email, and that will be to type the actual body of the email up in something like Microsoft Word or any other text program that you've got on your PC. And then once you've typed it up and you're happy with it, you can copy and paste it directly into this TinyMCE text editor, so it's there in a matter of seconds. And then just click on the Send Emails button, and it will send the email that you've carefully typed up in your Word document, taking your time, perhaps half an hour or so, and you won't have lost it. So there are 2 ways to get around losing your text that you've typed in due to the timeout function. The question of a spell checker which offers correct spelling options has been raised by Brian Keegan for the email facility or any other facility that uses the text editor. Now, currently the system does underline misspelt words, but it doesn't offer any possible correct spellings. As I mentioned before, the editor that we use is called TinyMCE and is a third-party piece of software that is in actual fact free to use. To introduce a spell checker with options on correct spellings would be a chargeable facility from the company TinyMCE. and to adopt this would require agreement from all user U3As, all the U3As that use U3A web. That would be difficult, if not impossible, to get that agreement. The charge is actually quite large for what is, in effect, a very small facility. So it's unlikely that we will get a spell checker with possible correct spellings offered. Okay, so I will now move on to the last section of my presentation, and this is to do with making your group page a pleasure to look at for people that log into our U3A web system and look at your group page. However, before we begin on this section, just a cautionary note. Displaying the contact details of the group leader in the group description is highly inadvisable, because in effect you are displaying your phone number and email details to the world. So if you put your email and phone number in the group description, just about everybody in the world can see it. And there are nasty little scammers in some far-flung foreign land who run things called bots that scour the internet for just such detail to use for nefarious means. Here we can see the page as it displays to anybody. That is both Peterborough U3A members and everybody from Afghanistan to Zimbabwe and all countries in between. And not all viewers around the world are nice people like we are in Peterborough U3A. However, as you can see here, the contact details that you're displaying in the group description are also available in the section below, which is titled Group Contact and Session Information. The only difference being that your email address is actually an anonymous link. Now, if you add this anonymity to the fact that this information is only available to members once they are logged in with their member number and password, and you can see that Sydney the scammer in Slovakia can't harvest your information to try and make your life a living hell. Therefore, you can see why it's highly recommended that you remove any contact details from the actual group description, because the system displays it to group members elsewhere. There really is no need for your email or telephone number to be in the group description. So, moving on, let's now look at how a group leader can add more appealing content for viewers. The why is because a more engaging page for your group is more likely to make viewers think, oh, that looks interesting, maybe I should give it a try. If your group description is merely a couple of words, then a viewer is likely to think boring and simply skip over it. If you want your group to continue to thrive, then new members are the lifeblood of a group with longevity. So now let's cover the how. Now for this demonstration, what we'll do is employ the Antiques Roadshow method of basic, better, best to show the difference that you can make. Okay, so what we'll do is start with a basic page. And whilst the page here may seem a little extreme in a negative way, some group leaders seem to take the path of least resistance and feel that brevity is the way to encourage people to join their group. Remember that this page is your window to the world and the only way that anyone really knows what your group is about. Your group page is what draws people in, and this applies to both existing Peterborough U3A members and those outside who are still to be persuaded to join us. Without new members, the group and ultimately Peterborough U3A will wither. An encouraging description will attract people to take a look at your group. Would you be encouraged to join a group that tells you when and where they meet but nothing about what they do? But it really isn't hard to improve things for the group. However, we do recognise that not everybody is comfortable with creating a description of what they do for their group, but there is help at hand. Now, whilst artificial intelligence, or AI, doesn't always get a good press, there are very good facilities available on the internet that will create whatever you want from a very brief description. One of these is a thing called ChatGPT, and this can be found from the address shown here at the bottom of the page, or simply go to Google and do a search for ChatGPT. That's all one word. Okay, so let's have a quick look at how using ChatGPT might work for you. Once you land on the ChatGPT homepage, there is a simple input field towards the bottom shown here in the red box. What I'll do is I'll type in a brief description of what I want the output to be. I will ask ChatGPT to write 2 paragraphs about ballroom dancing in later life. Now obviously you would choose what you want it to create for you, but keep it brief. Once you've typed in your requirement, just click on the button on the right shown here in the red box. Within a matter of seconds, ChatGPT will create a description of what you've asked for, similar to what you can see here. However, remember that this is a computer-generated output, and as such, I would recommend that you should copy and paste the return from ChatGPT into something like Microsoft Word or any other text editor, just to check it and make any adjustments that you might wish to make. When you're happy with what it says, copy it from Word or the other text editor and paste it into your group description. What I've done now is I've copied and pasted the text from ChatGPT into the group description. And you can see here that that description now gives the reader more of an idea of what the group does and shows the benefits of joining the group for them. And maybe most of all, it's likely to encourage someone to make further inquiries about the group. In our Antiques Roadshow league table, this is our better page. Okay, so we've now improved the page considerably, but the old saying goes that a picture paints 1,000 words, so why not include a picture in the description as well? This could be something you've taken at one of your meetings, or if not, then something perhaps from the internet. But just a word of caution here, beware of copyright laws when grabbing something from the internet. Many pictures actually fall under copyright, and to use them may render you liable to a charge. There are companies out there who chase just such infringements down, and they threaten legal redress. On this page you can see that we've now added first a picture as a header for the group, and then secondly a picture within the text itself. Now there is a video available for Peterborough U3A leaders on how to add pictures to their group pages. And I do know of at least one group leader who is, how shall I say this, less confident with tech stuff, and they've managed to follow the video and add a picture to their group. What I'll do is I'll show you where to find this video and others at the end of this section. So we're now starting to get quite an appealing page. You've got pictures and more descriptive text. But if you're feeling really adventurous, you can even add a short video to your group page. But if you want to go down this route, then it's probably advisable for you to contact me, and what we'll do is we'll walk through what's needed and I will assist you where necessary. As you can see here, the group page has now undergone a major transformation and is far more likely to draw people into your group. Firstly, there is an interesting and encouraging text description that we generated using ChatGPT. Then we've added graphics or pictures which will grab the attention of the reader. And finally, if you're feeling really adventurous, a video that will show in live action what your group's all about. In our Antiques Roadshow competition, this is definitely the best of the group descriptions. As I mentioned earlier, Peterborough U3A has a collection of help videos to assist both members and group leaders. The address of the video playlists are shown on this page, and if you make a note of them, you can visit them later. Just freeze the video and jot down the addresses. Or alternatively, you can log into the Peterborough U3A website and click on System Guides and FAQs in the left-hand menu. You need to be logged in for that though. On that page, there are various links to get you to the playlists of the videos. There are two lists for group leaders. The first is a more modern format, and that covers web buddies, administering group members, and adding a picture to your page. The second playlist is slightly older videos, and that covers sending emails. But even though it's older, it still covers all of the points that you need to know. Okay, that's it from me. Thank goodness, I hear you say. Thanks very much for your time, and I will now hand you back to Adrienne, who will add the final part of the group leaders meeting video. Thank you. Bye-bye. At this point, Adrienne returned as the event hostess and gave some points about what she intends to do going forward as group coordinator. On the point about risk assessments, Adrienne will continue to encourage group leaders to create and use risk assessments to help to prevent accidents. She also intends to, if time allows, create a better process to give new group leaders the support that they want when they start a new group. And finally, she will continue to work on the group leaders handbook with the aim of making it easier to use.